And now I would like to invite Dr. Avraham Weber to give his presentation. Avraham Weber is an adjunct professor at Fordham University and has also served as special envoy for the Israeli government since 2008. The title of his presentation is The Near East Peace and War as Reflected by Theological Thoughts. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I hope you can hear me well, and thank you very much for the kind invitation to be here today. And I would like to thank my colleague for an excellent presentation about the situation that we've just heard. Much of it is going to somehow also touch my remarks, so I hope that you listen carefully also to Olivier's presentation, because much of what he said will be relevant also to the topic that we're going to talk about today. Speaking about the situation in the Near East, and I apologize up front for being also a lawyer, I decided to kind of give you an understanding of how sides to the conflict see their political or their claim, or the political claims, and that is of course reflected always in the initial documents, which are constitutions in most of the world, but in our region we have less of that. So we should look into the constitutional orders and the ideas of both sides in order to kind of figure out what's the exit point or where things are going from. So I'll start first off from the Jewish side about their claim for a homeland that was actually formulated and established by Theodor Herzl, who has very strong roots here in Hungary. And the idea was to kind of make the claim for a state using secular rationalization for a national state. The Zionist plan is predominantly a non-religious plan. It believes in the idea that the Jewish people as such are an ethnic group that deserve to have a homeland, and that homeland, although being the case being made on secular grounds, is of course very much enrooted into the cultural and the religious background of the Jews, and the reason why the Zionist movement has proclaimed Israel as their homeland is of course very much backed to their religious rooting and as the Bible. The Balfour Declaration that was given by the British government during the World War I spoke about the recognition of a Jewish state in Palestine. We also see that the narratives and the rationalization of the Zionist movement is very much in line with the post-World War I Wilson's plan and trying to make the same claims that were made here in Central and Eastern Europe. Thank you. The region basically was much different than it is today. Area where Israel and Jordan today lie were basically two territories named Palestine and Transjordan that were mandated to the British Empire in 1922. Syria, Lebanon went under French influence. It's important also to state that the background of national claims in the Near East region is very much influenced from its Ottoman past, meaning that for many of the Arab nations and states, they first came to life as the Western European forces came to the area, introducing so-called secular idea of nationhood. The independence of declaration and the core constitutional principles of Israel declare Israel to be a Jewish and democratic state. For many years, our legal system had to deal with the issue, what does it mean to be a Jewish state? It means, in principle, that religious traditions and various notions or core notions that are incorporated in the Bible will be a part of the state. The Supreme Court actually adopted what we call the universal ideas or universal principle of Judaism, which is socialism, that is again anchored in the Bible, and the principle of the 7 commands of the sons of Noah, meaning that there is 7 deeds that are a order from God for everyone on this earth, regardless of his religion. Ethics and dilemma resolution mechanism are a very important role of the Israeli legal system. Israel, that basically was founded on the grounds of the British Mandate, and before that the Ottoman Empire, allows a very big room for religious law to take part of its own law. And therefore, although Israel perceives or proclaims itself to be a secular state, it has a very much stronghold, still a very big part that is done by the religious authorities and the rabbinates. Important thing, and that is something that is always incremental in Israel, the legislations and the constitution that is set forth recognizes also the rights of minorities and is actually supporting those minorities. From the other hand, we have, of course, the Palestinian national claim that was formulated basically as a result of the Balfour Declaration and the UN Partition Plan of 1947. The partition plan in principle recognized the idea that the territory that is now known to be the borders of Israel will be split into two countries, one Jewish country and one Arab country, and in the middle, Jerusalem, of course, would be resolved at a certain stage, recognizing already as early as 1947 that the interfaith would play some role in the solution to the Near East conflict. However, the offer that was put forth and agreed in the General Assembly of the UN was rejected by one side and proclaimed later to be what is now called the Nakba, which is the Palestinian Holocaust. And the narrative is that with the recognition of the rights of the Jews to have a state in Israel, the world has committed some sort of a Holocaust, which is in Arab words Nakba, against the Palestinians. In order to kind of look into the two existing groups within Palestinian political leadership, I thought it would be only fair to look at the inaugurating documents of both the PLO, which is the more moderate organization among others, and their initial document that was drafted in 1968, very much so in line with the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel, uses international wording that is based upon international law and some sort of a reference to languaging and texting that is known in Europe and in the United States. It does hold a few points that are extremely controversial from the beginning. It does not recognize full rights of minorities. The original documents that were changed in the 90s called also for the destruction of the State of Israel. That is now not a part of the charter anymore. But in any way, the charter itself holds a very strong national claim not based upon religion. And so, in principle, the door is opened for a dialogue. And in principle, one could argue that there could be some sort of an arrangement or some sort of a solution to the situation in the Near East. One of the more optimistic parts of that charter is, of course, the call for freedom of worship, visit of all, without discrimination of race, color, language, or religion. So, a document that is basically protesting the existence of the State of Israel holds in principle, theoretically, the ability with the interfaith and inter-religious dialogue to find some sort of a solution with the situation. The other political leadership of the Palestinians in Israel is Hamas, which is mainly dominant in Gaza, but very, very strong also in the West Bank. And therefore, it's also very important to speak about Hamas as not only a Gaza-related political leadership, but they do play a very imperative role within Palestinian political leadership. The Hamas, very much like Boko Haram that we heard before, makes a lot of religious claim for their national aspiration. In principle, Hamas believes in the Prophet. It rationalizes its all theories under the theories of Imam Hassan el-Banna, which basically means that Israel will exist as long as Islam will allow it to exist, and once Islam is in a position to take over, they will take over the entire state. The basic raison d'etat of Hamas is to create an Islamic state based upon Islamic resistance movement, and also calling for active jihad and active means against the state of Israel. A very quick remark that I wanted to make is that we're experiencing a very serious shift in the Near East nowadays from the 20th and 19th century, where the entire discourse was based upon Western national narratives. This was the Zionistic idea was shaped after many national ideas here in Europe, and we see the discourse, and we see the discussion moving more to theological narratives and rational analysis. Whereas the Near East met these narratives only at the beginning of the 20th century, one cannot expect that processes that happened here in Europe will happen also in the Near East. We also have a very important thing that we should hold in mind. The Jewish state that was based upon the Western narratives took 30 to 40 years of active preparation before declaring its independence, and that is why the political leadership from the Jewish side before proclaiming a state ran, let's say, the whole marathon in order to create state organizations, state bodies and institutions, whereas the Palestinian side first started to draft and address their political claim once Israel took over Gaza and the West Bank. Now, claim to fame. This is not special only to Israel. The change or the decline of moderate Islam in the Near East is something that we've experienced quite a lot in the last 20 years. We've seen in Egypt the period where the Muslim Brothers under President Morsi ran Egypt, Syria under ISIS. We have Hezbollah that was very active, still is, but less very active in Lebanon and kind of setting the tone for the political discourse in Lebanon. We see in Israel, mainly Gaza, but also in the West Bank, we see the rise of the Islamic Jihad and Hamas as political movements, the destabilization of Iraq and Libya, also once again with very concurring arguments to the ones that we've heard about the story of Boko Haram. And so we see that whether we accept it or not, whether we like it or not, religious arguments are now becoming once again a very important part of resolving or at least offering some sort of an alternative in this ongoing dispute. We also see very interestingly that even within the Arab world, we see a retreat from this concept of post-World War II, the Pan-Arabic Union. It is not very much there anymore. And so with the decline of a very strict state-like political thinking from the Arab side, we see that in many of these territories, these battles between the moderate and the extremist take place. So I would argue that we've moved in a way from a national conflict more to a religious conflict, or at least if we want to think about finding a solution to the conflict, we have to think also in religious paradigms and ways of promoting like-minded dialogue between nations and religion. there is, of course, a very clear signs coming from the ground, and that is the radicalization. And yesterday, by the way, evening, I read that there was a big survey about world religion, and they spoke about the fact that Christianhood, I think would be the right word in English, has continued, is the biggest religious in the world and still is stable, but referring to Islam, it's the largest growing religion in the world. And so what we should strategically be aware of, also for this topic, but also for others, it is very important to intensify the dialogue with the moderate and with the people who think in the old concepts that we have, and try and find out ways to isolate and limit the abilities of the radicals to influence these discussions. The Judeo-Christic ideas that were spoken earlier on this morning were also the bedrock of most of the international humanitarian law structures that we know, the UN charters and the development of the international humanitarian law is basically based in many ways on these universal principles that are anchored in this Judeo-Christ tradition. And as we saw before, one of the main core challenges that we have is, of course, that radical Islam calls to a white or black solution, which is, of course, complicating the discussion. National claim based on conflicts, of course, is an issue, and what I would argue today is that if we continue to speak about or we don't rely or don't look into the transformation that is very important in the internal dialogue between the faith, we will have issues. The core theological principles, as I've mentioned before, would be the suggested guidelines to go with, and trying to build the bridges and trying to figure out ways of bringing the positive and productive parts of societies together would be the right way to do it. By the way, I wanted to share some optimism and not only be pessimistic in my talk today. So we do see in the region now some sort of at least projected to the West, a new dialogue. If we look into what's happening right now in Lebanon and Syria, I think we should be very optimistic and we should be very supportive, at least about what's resonated to us. Syria, for example, is undergoing now a very interesting phase in kind of putting itself together after a very long civil war, and there one of the core issues of the new government is to kind of show the West the openness and willingness to talk to minorities, support minorities, protect minorities, and if this would be the case, of course, we have some room for optimism. We also have to keep on thinking of what could we contribute and what could we offer in order to make this work. If we continue in using old paradigms, I heard quite a lot today that one is rethinking the term of just war. So just bringing it up and trying to make the context to our talk now, I think that if we'll continue to try and resolve issues based on classical thinking and modalities of international law as it exists today, we're not going to make any progress, because we need to build the bridges, or we need to work together in order to kind of offer a solution out of the corner that we all are right now. And my claim today would be that, of course, if we use what the experience and we use the interfaith dialogues that we have, we might as well have a chance in going forward. I would also say that we're talking, when we speak about interfaith joint work, I think that we can offer something which would be a plus-sum game and not a zero-sum game, which we currently have in the region. And that might support processes. Again, I wanted to kind of, when we come near to the end of my presentation, I wanted to kind of show you that this is not just me coming up with ideas that make no sense. One of the interesting ideas that came out as a spin-off of the Abraham Accord that were signed 2020 was the opening of a Avraham House in Abu Dhabi, and that is supposed to be a place where we're going to have this interfaith dialogue where Jews, Muslims, and Christians would work together in somehow discussing ideas of how to bring Israel, the Arab world, and the US and the West more together. So these things are forming. You also have a very strong interfaith dialogue that is also being promoted by the church, which is also very important for us to kind of touch on. And I think that if you look in the historical backgrounds of the religions and the Old Testament, there is a lot to be found. And in retrospective, the more the claims and the more the discussion about national rights are anchored and related to the religion background, which is at the end the bedrock of all people living in the Near East, I think that we have a stronger chance of presenting something new. So thank you very much for your time.